What is going on, everyone? Over the weekend, we got some interesting news regarding a new Psycho Pass movie to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the anime, which is very weird to think about that Psycho Pass is actually 10 years old already. Like, it was already out when I was really getting into anime for the first time, but still, it was new then, and for it to be a decade old already, it's hard for me to process, but it is, and we're getting the 5th movie, I believe, at this point, this time called Psycho Pass Providence. Now, we don't know too much about it yet. All we really got was a visual, a name, and a confirmation that the director was returning. Now, we don't know if Gen Urobuchi, the creator, is returning yet. Hopefully he will, but that is not a guarantee, because I believe all Urobuchi worked on previously for Psycho Pass was the first season, which, is the one everyone likes, and the first movie. Whereas the director has been a part of everything, so it's not like we can say, oh, the director's here, therefore it's going to be great, because he was on board for the good parts of Psycho Pass that people liked, and the parts of Psycho Pass that people didn't necessarily like. But we'll see. Maybe we'll eventually find out that Urobuchi will come back. Maybe not. We don't know yet. What we do know, besides the director returning, is this visual. Now, there is a decent amount of information that we can derive from the visual itself, specifically because of the characters that appear on it and the characters who do not. If we look at the visual, you'll notice we basically are only seeing the characters from the first 2 seasons. We aren't seeing any of the new characters from Psycho Pass 3. We aren't seeing Aruto, we aren't seeing Kei, we aren't seeing any of those characters, which should suggest to us this takes place prior to Psycho Pass 3. Now, in addition to that, you'll notice Frederica is here, and Kogami is here. Kogami would only be here if this takes place after the 3rd Sinners of the System movie, where Kogami returns to Japan by way of Frederica. So them being present and the season 3 characters not being present seems to make it pretty clear to me this is going to take place in between the Sinners of the System movies and Psycho Pass 3. The other things that we can use to justify that are the fact that Mika is here, but not in her chief uniform, which she would be in if this was set during or after Psycho Pass 3, and also Yayoi is still here, despite the fact that she's supposed to have recovered of her criminal nature, right? Her hue getting clouded and everything by the time of Psycho Pass 3. So because Yayoi is still an enforcer here and Mika is still an inspector, those also reinforce the idea that this is set in between Sinners of the System 3 and Psycho Pass 3. Now, you'll notice there are these 2 characters up at the top of the visual. They appear to be Arata's father and Kei's brother from Psycho Pass 3. And that's very interesting. On top of that, simply the fact that Akane's here and everyone else is here prior to Psycho Pass 3 seems to suggest even further this is going to specifically bridge the gap between everything that happened at the end of the 3rd Sinners of the System movie and all the stuff that has transpired before Psycho Pass 3. That's relevant because if you watched Psycho Pass 3 when it was airing, you were probably very confused from a Western perspective, because a lot of things don't really get explained or filled in. And even by the end of it, even after the Psycho Pass 3 movie, a lot of things that happened in between that gap in time just is not explained. Some of it is by way of the Sinners of the System movies, which unfortunately were not readily available other than, I believe, the first one, which isn't really that relevant, prior to Psycho Pass 3 coming out, which, made things even harder for Western fans than it would have been for people in Japan who would have had access to those movies. And while those do fill in some things, like why is Kogami back in Japan? Who is Frederica? Why does she have this team? Why are certain enforcers and inspectors from Division 1 not there anymore, right? Like, a lot of that stuff is explained by the second and primarily the third Sinners of the System movie. but other things are not, and are not explained at all throughout Psycho Pass 3. Most notably, why was Akane locked up in confinement? Why did that happen? That is never explained at all throughout Psycho Pass 3, just that some sort of incident happened, right? And she gets let out at the end of the first Inspector movie, but we're never told why she was there. I would imagine that this movie is going to focus on whatever incident resulted in that. It's going to focus on Arata's father and Kei's brother and how they were involved with whatever incident got Akane put in confinement. And it's going to possibly result in a lot of these characters going on to Frederica's Ministry of Foreign Affairs task force, and just kind of fill in the additional gaps leading into Psycho Pass 3. And maybe we'll see some of the Season 3 specific characters like at the end or here and there, but the fact that they're not in the visual could certainly suggest that they're not going to be in it at all, or very, very little. Or it could mean nothing because it's just one visual and maybe they are going to be present and they just aren't showing that off yet. That is kind of the thing, right? We don't know everything. We just have one visual to go off of, and once they release more visuals, that could change things. But based on what we have here, it does seem pretty clear, to me at least, that this will help to fill in the gaps between the end of the third Sinners of the System movie and Psycho Pass 3, which I do appreciate. But at the same time, I'm sure there are a lot of people who don't really want to think about Psycho Pass 3 anymore. Because Psycho Pass 3 was very weird because it did swap out so many characters. And I don't think people really cared that much for the new characters and just wanted to see more of the existing characters. Like the fact that Akane is just removed from everything, I think bothered a lot of people. I think the fact that even returning characters like Kogami and Ginoza were largely removed from things and were kind of just in the background bothered a lot of people. And I think the weirdness of characters like Arata with his basically superpower like abilities and just kind of the blandness that a lot of the new characters had bothered a lot of people. Like it's not what people wanted from a third season of Psycho Pass. Like if it had been a spin-off focusing on like a different division, I think people would have been fine with it. But I don't think it's the direction a lot of people wanted the series to go. And with this movie not even continuing from the end of that and specifically trying to bridge the gap leading into it might bother people and make people less interested because they might not care to see anything more regarding Psycho Pass 3 or the events that led into it. Now, I do think it's still important to show that because never explaining why Akane was locked up would be very stupid. And I'm very surprised they've even waited this long, like 3 years since Psycho Pass 3 came out, to bother explaining it. But, you know, this could have been more interesting if it was set at a different point in time, right? Or even if you wanted to set it in between Sinners of the System 3 and Psycho Pass 3, because I liked the second and third Sinners of the System movies, not the first one so much. I think generally that's seen as the least good and the most boring. But like I really liked the third one. And I wouldn't mind seeing something, you know, after Kogami returns to Japan, but before the stuff that gets the events of Psycho Pass 3 kicked off. So like if it was just that, I think I'd be a little bit more like excited for this, and possibly others would be as well. But seeing that we have Arata's father and Kei's brother in the visual as well, like clearly suggests like we're going to be dealing with Psycho Pass 3 relevant stuff. Even if those specific characters like the new inspectors and enforcers are not present or are very, you know, irrelevant to it, even if they do show up, I think like reminding people of Psycho Pass 3 is going to like make people less excited for this. So I don't know, like I am excited because I like that this does at the very least seem to be focusing on the characters that people want to see and that I want to see, right? Kogami, Ginoza, Yayoi, Akane, etc. Like I'm happy that they appear to be in the forefront of this, but the fact that it still has to have these connections to a season of Psycho Pass that was very weird, even if it wasn't like terrible or anything. Like it's it dulls it a little bit. It dulls the excitement a little bit, even if I am excited. There are other concerns, though, of course. Psycho Pass has this weird sort of history with its licensing, because Season 1, Season 2, and the first movie were all licensed by Funimation and dubbed and released, no problem. But then the Sinners of the System movies were not, and neither was Psycho Pass 3. In fact, the way you could watch Psycho Pass 3 and also the first Inspector movie for Psycho Pass 3 was through Amazon. So none of that stuff ever got dubbed. I don't believe that Sinners of the System movies ever got officially licensed. So it's like, what's going to happen with this? Is Funimation / Crunchyroll going to get this and dub it? Is that going to be awkward if they do without having dubbed the Sinners of the System movies at the very least? Or is Amazon going to get it? Or is no one going to get it? Like, what's going to happen with this? It's very awkward and weird. And I think that also creates an additional disconnect between like the parts of Psycho Pass that people liked, the first season and the first movie, and this other stuff, because this other stuff has this extra like barrier to trying to watch it because of the weird like licensing or lack thereof that they have. And also, just as I said before, if Urabuchi isn't on board for this, that's also going to turn people off of it a little bit, because you know, he hasn't been a part of everything. And a lot of the stuff that people did not like for Psycho Pass that's come out is stuff that he had no involvement with, right? Like, I liked 2 of the 3 Sinners of the System movies, which he was not involved with. But, you know, Psycho Pass 2, kind of whatever. Like, I don't hate that as much as I know a lot of people did. But, you know, it's a messier and weirder experience than I think people wanted. Psycho Pass 3, as I've already said, is something that doesn't really feel like it should be a 3rd season of Psycho Pass. It feels more like a spin-off that kind of got jammed in here. And again, the weird confusion about what happened in the time in between this and the previous movies just creates more confusion and awkwardness for viewers. So I don't know, right? Like, there's a lot of things that could go wrong with this, or could make it not as interesting to people as it maybe should be, being, you know, the big 10th anniversary movie. But I am cautiously optimistic, because I know what Psycho Pass can be like at its best. And I really, really hope this will be more of that and less of like weird kind of tangentially related stuff that nobody really wants to see. So that's about it. Short video here because we don't know too much about this, but hopefully we'll learn more little by little. Like, you'd think if this is supposed to be celebrating the 10th anniversary that it would come out soon, because this is the 10th anniversary year. Like, October would be 10 years. But I don't know, like, this probably won't come out this year. I would imagine next year, just because they've announced it so late. But hopefully not too long from now. I think it'd be very weird if this doesn't come out for like a couple years, given this is the 10th anniversary. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully it actually gets licensed and dubbed and not like left in a weird limbo or picked up by Amazon, if they're even doing that anymore. So again, cautiously optimistic. I'm hoping for the best, but there are things to be concerned about. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Are you looking forward to this? Are you concerned? Do you need Urabuchi to return? Do you like that this is probably going to be in between Sinners of the System 3 and Psycho Pass 3? Do you want to see the Psycho Pass 3 characters or not at all? What do you think is going to happen? Why do you think Akane is going to ultimately get locked up? Whatever you think, whatever you're concerned about or happy about regarding this, leave it in the comments below. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Take care, everyone. I'll see you next time.